Roast Magazine presents Industry Conversations, Episode 1, Journey into Coffee. Recorded live at the 2025 Specialty Coffee Expo, this series brings you conversations with coffee professionals from across the industry. In this episode, we're diving into personal journeys, how these individuals found their way into coffee, the pivotal moments that shaped their careers, and what continues to drive their passion for the craft.
I had my first coffee job in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and I was taught how to pour latte art by one of the semifinalists or runners-up in an early barista competition, which gave me an inroad when I applied for a job at Intelligentsia in Chicago. And I was basically the lead barista for the third cafe in Chicago in Millennium Park. I was in a lot of ways in the right place at the right time, and count myself very privileged to have been mentored by people like Jeff Watts. So I got to do some sample roasting. I learned how to cup with Mike Strump, who's at Swiss Water now, and roasted in production for 5 years for them, and then began sourcing coffee under the tutelage of Jeff and Kyle Glanville. And I bought coffee from all over, but mostly Brazil and East Africa. And I ran the QC lab for the company for about 3 years before moving out to California, joining Royal Coffee in the role that I'm currently in now.
I come from the theater, so I was getting my master's in play and screenwriting, and I wanted a job that I could do in Europe, where I was moving from New York, and coffee seemed like a way to always be working. And then it turns out coffee is a way to also always be learning. So that's how I ended up staying.
This is like the most complex industry and product and supply chain. So just doesn't matter how long you're doing it. There's always new things, new evolutions of how the coffee's brought to market. So just studying everything, being a student of coffee. I love that.
Before coffee, I was in New York traditional ad agencies and internet agencies, and analyzing market research and working on brands like brand positioning, brand voice, and all of that kind of stuff. So that's always been in my kind of DNA. I think even before I got into advertising, I was doing this when I was a kid, like trying to sell brownies or trying to sell lemonade, like our golf balls that I collected. Like I was always like, oh, here's something that someone needs. Here's my audience. And, so anyways, it's just kind of in my DNA. Also service is like in my DNA too. So anyways, the coffee industry really like resonates with me. So I kind of bring that marketing perspective, that lens of like, oh, that's a really great product, but you're not really talking about it in a way that, connects with people.
It's so substantial, the amount of energy and information that you can dive into at this plant. But it's also about people, and like those experiences that we have every day of just learning somebody's name, learning somebody's order. I've met so many incredible people from behind the bar now, and here too, it's just endless connections that, even if they lead nowhere, are just nourishing.
As a roaster, especially like I live in the United States, as a roaster in the United States, you don't know the reality on the ground unless you travel to a coffee producing country, unless you have to traverse on the roads, on the mountains. It takes a person, it can take you 5 hours to get from the airport to, or 5 hours or more, to get from the airport to the coffee farm. The coffee also has to take that journey. And so really realizing how much work it takes also to pick coffee, from process coffee to dry coffee, those pieces of information that you can't learn unless you experience them, unless you're there. And then also, of course, the intangibles, talking with coffee farmers, talking with producers about their daily lives, about their joys and their challenges, and realizing that we are all just people in the industry.
I always liked tasting and stuff. When I was in college, my friends and I were starting to get really into like whiskey. And so we actually used to set up whiskey tastings on our own. And actually one of the trainers from the coffee company I was working for kept wanting to get invited to our whiskey tastings. And it kind of went from there. And I realized that there are actually jobs where you can taste stuff and analyze stuff for a living. And coffee just seemed to be that track. And, learning more about all of the processes, all of the roasting. I think like early on in my career, I think I had a lot of good mentors and really good examples that kept me in the industry, that really made me want to stay in the industry. And I realized how much more to the industry there was.
Let's call it 1999, 2000. I got involved in the Cup of Excellence program in the very first auction. So I read about it, and you can't believe how groundbreaking that was. The first Cup of Excellence auction, say 1999 or 2000. I think it was 1999. And we bought a lot in the first auction. And fascinatingly, I think I can go back and find, I think it was $1.32 a pound, $1.32 for Cup of Excellence. The starting price now is $5, and the average price is far over 10. It's probably closer to 20. But then we bought a lot for $1.32. And even better, people phoned us up and said we were insane. Why did we pay so much money for Brazil Cup of Excellence? And they said, you could buy that for 80 cents a pound. Why would you pay $1.32? I said, because it was the very best of the Brazil, and it was something very unique, and it was a small lot traceable to a, who cares, you know? Like, funny enough, that really put us also on the map, because all the people that were in that kind of high-end business, particularly in that time in Brazil, got to learn of this ridiculous company in the United Kingdom that was actually looking for what they were selling.
So the thing that made me want to stay in coffee after that first experience in as being a barista was some training. When I started to learn that coffee grew on trees and was a cherry, that was a big moment. I think that I saw the disconnect that I had with my supply chain, with the food that I consumed probably the most. And as someone who's very interested in food and food pathways, it just kind of was a light bulb moment.
I have a strange entry point into coffee. I was doing banana research. In East Africa, banana is the #1 source of calories, but they also grow with coffee. And so when I was doing banana research in 2009, 2010 in Uganda, I started becoming interested in coffee because of the mixed agriculture system that it's grown in Uganda. And I had a mentor, his name is Pete Van Asten, who is now the head of coffee research for Olam. But he really so enthusiastic about this kind of food security cash crop system that coffee was a part of. It was infectious. And I started realizing, wow, coffee and cooperatives can be a great way forward for my career. And it was also an opportunity for me to get to know, I love more than anything, the culture, the landscapes, the kind of the myth of coffee that lives in a lot of countries that a lot of times we've forgotten, or we perhaps have enough exposure to in the United States. And these myths are so alive in Ethiopia, or if you talk about indigenous cooperatives and the way they are engaging with coffee as a plant that has a spirit.
From both sides of this conversation, you have to sort of think about the business purpose. So relationships should absolutely support your purchasing decision, but ultimately you need a certain amount of coffee of a certain quality at a certain price. And so when you're looking for new relationships, that's a great place to start. And then you also, once you've met those needs, you start thinking, okay, does this business partner align with my mission, my values, my ethics? Are these the kinds of people that I want to grow my company with?
I grew up in Mexico City, which is as far away as coffee as you can get. Coffee, as you know, in Mexico grows in the southeast, Chiapas, Oaxaca, Veracruz, the coffee triangle. So I had no concept of what coffee was. But since I was already bilingual, I could speak English and Spanish, I was working as a translator. That was my job. That meant I was in every single conversation with growers, roasters, buyers, and I just got to learn by translating. There were no stakes for me, I just had to repeat what everybody else was saying. But I got involved that way and got to know the growers. Then I moved to Oaxaca, thanks to this, and worked directly with the growers, with a mill manager and exports manager at the time.
Coffee is not something, at least at the time when I was beginning, it was not something that had a lot of canon to study. you know, so it's mostly a work of improvisation and, you know, and facing problems and trying to figure out how to invent solutions for them. And the more I did it, the more I understood how much potential there was in the coffee industry to affect the lives of people and in a meaningful way. And I understood as well what the act of working in coffee can do for individuals, including myself, you know, as an evolution of self. You know, coffee has that ability to connect people to each other and connect us to nature and to connect people from different cultures. And very few things do that as effectively, I think, as coffee can.